smuggled from Cuba and across the southern border with Mexico, and was now obligated to pay her smugglers for the illegal entry into the United States. The tip further explained that the traffickers made threats against the woman and her family, and that if her debt was not immediately repaid, she would be forced to work in the sex trade until her financial obligation was satisfied. The tip also indicated there were several other women that were trapped in this horrific situation. Our detectives quickly acted on this lead by setting up a surveillance operation, which confirmed these disgusting allegations, and that these women desperately needed our help. Our investigation uncovered that these 8 women ages range from 18 to 24. They were first forced to work in various adult entertainment clubs in Hillsborough and Pinellas County, and that they were never allowed to leave the home without an escort. All of the trapped women were working as prostitutes, strippers, and forced to perform other acts other types of sex acts to pay off their debt of $60,000 each, which was what the smuggling cost was to enter the United States. To elicit even more fear and intimidation, the traffickers would threaten the women and their families at gunpoint. Knowing the details and plight of these women, we acted immediately to free them from this forced servitude. Last Thursday night, we followed 7 of the victims who were being escorted by one of their traffickers to the International Plaza, which is where undercover detectives made contact and facilitated their rescue. Simultaneously, we obtained a court-authorized search warrant for 2 properties where these victims were being held, and where we also recovered the 8th victim. During this investigation, 2 of the individuals responsible for the trafficking and tormenting of these women were arrested. 35-year-old Ahmet Ramon Maquiera de la Cal and 29-year-old Rosalia Leonard Garcia. This couple is behind bars as we speak, with each facing 47 charges that include human trafficking, human smuggling, false imprisonment, and RICO for their organized crime activities. The conditions these women were living in only reinforced that they had no way out. These victims were forced to stay 5 women to 1 room in bunk beds. The remaining 3 victims also had to share a room. They had no light in their bedrooms and all had to share a single bathroom, while the traffickers shared the master bedroom and never had to share a restroom with anyone. The women not only had to hand over all of their earnings to their captors, they also had to pay for food, rent, and even the gas their trafficker used to take them to their so-called dates. We located evidence indicating how much each woman owed and how much they brought in with their sex acts, as well as cash, condoms, a stolen firearm, and the victims' identifications. Quite simply, these women who fled the repressive government of Cuba in search for a better life were now forced to be sex slaves. They were not free to leave. They were repeatedly threatened with violence if they did not work in the sex trade or ever attempted to flee. The traffickers held their identifications, cell phones, and personal documents as ransom. The traffickers gave them a new cell phone, which they monitored, and even their families were terrorized to ensure absolute and total control. This organized criminal enterprise was nothing short of modern-day slavery. I have no doubt that if our human trafficking investigators had not acted as quickly as they did, this situation would have continued, expanded, and could have ended up with one of these victims losing their life at the hands of these traffickers, who only cared about profiting off these women. All 8 women received medical care and are currently connected with safe housing and other services, thanks to the partnership we share with Sail of Freedom, a truly great organization who works every day to support victims of human trafficking, stopping those who prey on the innocent and vulnerabilities of others, And rescuing victims from the grasp of human trafficking is a priority mission of mine, which is why we have a group of investigators dedicated to eradicating human trafficking. I am so proud of these men and women who every day work tirelessly to identify and arrest traffickers, those who prey on our children, and free victims while providing the resources they need to rebuild their shattered lives. Here in Tampa Bay, we will never tolerate any form of slavery. To all the undercover detectives here today, thank you. Thank you for protecting our community. You are saving lives. I would now like to introduce someone who, without a doubt, has limitless passion and energy to rescue victims and put traffickers behind bars where they belong, and whose Office of Statewide Prosecution will now ensure that these heartless individuals who preyed on these 8 women will face the most severe consequences and never have the opportunity to ever victimize another human being. Our top cop, keeping our Florida community safe, our Florida Attorney General, Ashley Moody. General?
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you for those who are with us bright and early this morning to highlight an incredibly tragic case, recognize the amazing efforts of the human trafficking squad here in Hillsborough County, and to help us again inform the public that human trafficking does take place in our communities right here in Florida. And we are constantly reaching out, trying to engage the public to make them aware of that and educate them on how to inform us if they suspect that this is going on. This is one of the worst trafficking cases that I have seen. It hits on every element when we are training law enforcement and prosecutors across the state on what to look for in one of these cases, whether it's using a weapon to threaten violence, whether it's threatening the violence of their close loved ones, threatening to kill their family members if they did not cooperate, separating them from the public by not allowing them to go outside of the place they're residing without someone accompanying them, taking away their identification documents, not letting them have any contact except by phones in which the traffickers control. The list goes on and on and on. I commend this sheriff, Sheriff Chronister, for having the foresight and being willing to put together a specific unit trained in human trafficking. It is a unique type of case and prosecution in which the nuances must be explained and educated to the officers before they get the call. Because one of the most important ways that we can successfully put these traffickers behind bars is cooperation from and participation from the victims. And in this case, I am extraordinarily proud of the brave, courageous 8 women who lived through hell for months, not knowing if they would ever be able to get out of that situation. These horrific acts of sex trafficking are a direct result of the crisis we are experiencing at the border. And you've heard me time and time again talk about fentanyl and how we intercepted enough at the border to kill the whole U.S. population in 1 month. Or the fact that the lax border and the incentivized policies creating this surge, it's like throwing fuel on trafficking cases, on smuggling cases, on drug charges. Today's announcement and today's case and the rescue of these 8 women is a direct result of this chaotic open border. I've been saying for months, this is the way it manifests itself in what is a non-traditional border state. Every state has become a border state because we are struggling to keep pace with what is happening as a result of the border. Because make no mistake, these depraved individuals, these sex traffickers, took advantage of the open border in order to complete these crimes. Our statewide prosecutors will aggressively prosecute these two individuals. They are behind bars now. We will seek pretrial detention. We will seek the maximum penalties, because these are the types of people that prey on vulnerable individuals in our communities. These are the people that need to be behind bars. And I am so grateful for our prosecutors. This will be a multi-jurisdictional case. And I know they, along with the hardworking men and women of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office and other agencies, will do everything in their power to make sure they remain behind bars. I plead with community members to, again, educate yourselves on recognizing the signs of human trafficking. You can go to youcanstopht.com. It contains information on how you can participate in helping us in this mission to eradicate human trafficking from Florida. We also just launched last week a human trafficking summit, which is still online. You can go to humantraffickingsummit.com to register. Thankfully, these victims had alert, aggressive investigators that, after receiving the phone call, immediately sprang into action, and the defendants are now behind bars, and they were behind bars within days. But this work is not over. There are other victims right now in our communities that will need to be rescued. And we need the community's help in making that happen. So we appreciate you being here to not only recognize today's announcement, this important work, but in helping us get the word out to the community that it is not over. The surge is still in effect. We will still see vulnerable women and children preyed upon. And the only way traffickers get put behind bars is for everyone to participate in the eradication of this heinous crime. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, General Moody. I was a little remiss in my duties in making a few introductions. Nick Cox and Rita Peters with the Statewide Prosecutor's Office, and one of our heroes, Misty LaPerriere with Selah Freedom, joining the Attorney General and myself. What questions can we answer?
Sheriff, do you know how long the 8 women were in the U.S.?
We're still working on that, still processing a bunch of documentation. We wanted to get this story out. We wanted to get it out quickly, hoping that some of the other victims would have the fortitude to contact somebody, to make that emergency call for help. But we're still working through a lot of details. We're working now to track down the money, to find out exactly where the profit was gone, where the money was gone. Why were they paying $60,000 to come across when we know that most wolves are charging $7,000? Why were they being so intimidating by fear of violence? This was quite an organized crime ring. How they would fly them from Cuba to Mexico, and then bring them over one way or the other across the border. They were told to make contact with a Border Patrol agent, where they were given a notice to appear a few years from now. And then some of them were given bus tickets to come here, and some of them were given plane rides to get here. And when they got here, they were greeting them with balloons. Welcome home. Welcome to Tampa. So they had pictures and photos that they would send back to their families in Cuba to let them know that they arrived in the United States. There's no doubt in my mind that they were also using that as props to encourage other young women to come over here and enjoy this good life and enjoy the United States here too. So quite a comprehensive and organized crime ring. But again, a lot of this investigation will still continue. We know that they were operating in adult nightclubs here in Pinellas County. You know, were those owners made aware of it? I'd have a hard time believing how they weren't made aware when they were undocumented, and we know it's against the law to hire an undocumented person as gainful employment. How were they being employed? So, but to what level of involvement were they helping drive this sex trade? There's no doubt that they were. To what degree? We still have to figure a lot of this out. To answer your question, just a lot to figure out. That'll be the second phase of this ongoing investigation.
Do you think there are any more, aside from the 8 women that we rescued, do you think there are any more victims connected to this case in particular?
To this case? We do not with this case, but we do believe, we've all heard about some of the Cuban crime rings, with some of the theft rings. We know that they're involved in some stolen cars. Matter of fact, part of this second phase, and there'll be additional charges, is one of the traffickers, the female, was driving a car. That's a stolen car that was re-VINed out of Miami. So we've seen that. We're just recently starting to learn now that this Cuban crime ring is now involved in trafficking these young women. So we'll continue to work through that.
And all 8 women who were rescued in this case are from Cuba?
Are from Cuba, yeah. And like I said, we believe there might be some other Cuban organizations that are loosely affiliated. We believe the women don't know each other, the traffickers do. Again, this human trafficking unit that we have here, working with the statewide prosecutor's office, there's no doubt that they'll get to the bottom of it.
And what will happen to the women now? Will they be deported, or what's going to happen with them?
We're working with Homeland Security investigations. The federal government has the ultimate decision-making ability. An immigration attorney has come talk to them. We've, again, working closely with Sail of Freedom to get them some type of temporary asylum and complete paperwork if they choose to remain residents here. That'll be part of the federal government will make that determination.
Any other questions?
And I understand that the women were under the impression that, or they paid to come here, correct? Are they considered victims, in this case?
Yeah,
They paid to come?
Yeah, they're considered victims, not because they paid to come here. They were considered victims because they were forced into the sex trade to repay that debt. They had no other options to make payments any other way, and they were forced that you can't leave here. They were held hostage. Like I said, this was a modern day slavery is what this was. You're going to work until you pay your debt. You're not going to have any communication with your family without us monitoring it. And they would keep their money. I mean, they were charging them for everything. They were keeping very little money they derived from the actual sex act because it was gone to food, rent, the cell phone that they charged them, that they mandated that they had, and the fuel and gas to even drive them to the dates that the traffickers set up. So they didn't get to keep very much money.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.